I'd like to welcome everybody to a regular meeting of the Ojai Planning Commission. Members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission on items appearing on the agenda are requested to complete a speaker's card and file it with the secretary prior to the start of the meeting. Cards are available in the lobby. Speakers should state their name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Comments must be directed to the commission, not the audience. While Planning Commission is in session, all in attendance are expected to maintain order and decorum and to obey the orders of the chair. Roll call, please.
Chair Zabilla?
Yes.
Vice Chair Jagiello absent. Commissioners Quillisi?
Here.
Corbin?
Here.
Merck?
Here.
Nolan?
Here.
Powers?
Here.
Commissioner Quillisi, could you lead us in the pledge, please?
Certainly. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're at public communications, which is the time set aside during the Planning Commission for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on items of city business other than scheduled agenda items. Matters raised at this time may be briefly discussed by the Commission and will generally be referred to staff and or placed on a subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than for emergency items, no action can be taken at this meeting. I don't have any public communications cards. So if not, I'm going to move on to disclosure of site visits and ex parte contacts. Sure. Yeah. Katie, what did you want to speak on? Okay. Sure. Commissioner Quillisi?
I have visited, we're 2 sites, right? Yes, 2 sites, and had no ex parte communications.
I visited both sites and had no ex parte conversation.
I visited both sites. I did not have any ex parte contacts. I did speak to the Historic Preservation Commission last week.
I visited both sites and have had no ex parte contacts.
I too visited both sites and have had no ex parte contacts.
I, too, visited both sites and had no ex parte contacts.
Okay, I have been asked to do a quick switcheroo on the, switch the public hearing item first. Do you have any objections to that, Mr. Summers? Because we are going to continue that matter, or it's been recommended for continuance. Okay, so we're going to just jump ahead real quick, and we'll be right back to our number 1 item momentarily, but our public hearing item is design review permit DRP 16-13. Applicant proposes the installation of 2 new gates, repaint the sign on the stucco exterior face of the espadana immediately above the crown of the entrance arch, and planting of 2 new trees in lavender at 130 West Ojai Avenue, historic landmark number 7, St. Thomas Aquinas Chapel, aka the Ojai Valley Museum. The general plan designation of the site is public quasi-public, and the zoning classification of the site is public quasi-public. A categorical exemption has been prepared pursuant to CEQA. Property owner, City of Ojai, Representative Wendy Barker, Ojai Valley Museum. I'd like to hear from staff, please.
Thank you. So as it states in the staff report, this item is requested a continuation from staff to complete the review as there's new items. This project has kind of had a couple of new things attached to it over a period of time. There was a new note in there to remove 4 fig trees in Rosemary, and as you know, there's things that happen when you have ground disturbance, and it triggers different things. So we're asking for that. I would also make note of this, that while this has been around for a really long time, and staff was trying to expedite it for the museum because they do have city funds to complete this, it was continued at the HPC, so it's even a third reason to continue it because it is a landmark property, and we were hoping, since it was going to HPC, it'd be ready for you tonight. So all the way around, it needs to be continued, and the HPC will not hear this until February, 2nd meeting in February. So I guess we would be asking that you just continue and let us renotice it. Wouldn't you say, Matt, the best thing to do? So we'll just continue it to a date uncertain and let us renotice it when everything's in order and HBC has completed their review.
Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing because this is a public hearing item. Anybody like to speak on this? Not, I'm going to close the public hearing and I will entertain a motion.
I move to continue public hearing item number 2 to a date uncertain.
I will second that.
Roll call?
Quilisi?
Yes.
Corbin?
Yes.
Merck?
Yes.
Isabella?
Yes.
Nolans?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Okay. So we are going to move on to our consent item. And I am going to propose that we pull this consent item and reopen the public hearing. I think that this is a layered and complicated issue, and I think both sides of the issue obviously have great merit, and I think that we've had a raft of emails since we last met on this issue, so do I have to do anything else other than that to?
The chair has the power to pull an item from consent. You've accomplished that. Reopening the public hearing, I think the chair has the power to do that as well.
Okay. Okay. So we have a number of speakers' cards on the item, so maybe we should do that first, and then we will discuss.
So,
Oh,
I'm sorry. So,
sorry, staff.
Staff would just like to, give you a brief overview, a little staff report here, and your staff report, if you don't mind.
No, I thought.
So we have prepared for you a resolution pursuant to your direction from the last meeting, January 4th. We did add a revised staff report that did give you, reiterate the direction we got from Planning Commission. Before you on the dais tonight, we have a request from the applicant's representative to a request for continuation for this for this particular item, and they state their reasons for requesting a continuance, and so that is up for your consideration tonight. And then also we have a packet of the emails that have come in, and then also staff prepared sort of at the last minute other houses that have been approved for demolition and a project description on most of them as to why, fire or abandonment of the property, et cetera. We can only go back to 2004 readily today. So we did kind of give you that as some background, because I know there were some questions about what types of demolitions that Ojai has done in the last, decade or so. So we give you that information, and that's really all we have. Again, minor revisions to the resolution, and then the new information has come in. And I'm open to any questions you might have.
In terms of dealing with the continuance, should we have to take public comment anyway, since we've got the public hearing open.
Mm-hmm.
Should we do that first and then decide whether or not we're going to go from there?
I think that seems reasonable.
It'd be a reasonable approach to take public comment and then evaluate whether you will continue it as the applicant requests and or evaluate in that whether you wish to refer it to the HPC or not.
Okay. Okay, so I am going to hear from Craig Walker.
Good evening. I want to take issue with the commission granting this project a categorical exemption under CEQA. The planning director is recommending that you grant the project a Class 1 CEQA exemption based on existing facilities. However, under Section 15300, Historical Resources, it says a categorical exemption shall not be used for a project which may cause a substantial adverse change in the significance of a historic resource. I would say demolition is definitely a substantial adverse change to the significance of a historical resource. Under CEQA, a structure qualifies as an historical resource if it is over 50 years old and could potentially be listed on the California Register of Historical Places. It does not have to be formally listed or designated, although this house is listed on the city's reconnaissance survey, where it is given a 2 for visual significance and a 2 for integrity. A property is eligible for the California Register of Historic Places when it embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, region, or method of construction. During the concept review of this project, commissioners and others remarked how sad it would be to lose this wonderful example of 1920s Spanish bungalow architecture. These comments were made because the house embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, Spanish bungalow, period, 1920s, region, downtown Ojai residential neighborhood. The city recently landmarked a small adobe home on Aliso in part because it embodied the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, region, and method of construction. The consultant's report questions the integrity of the building because it has new windows and front door, but those alterations are minor and do not disqualify the home under CEQA. The packet claims the foundation is badly deteriorated and needs to be replaced, but no evidence is presented. In a case like this, the city should have one of its own inspectors examine the foundation to see if truly it must be replaced or could be repaired at a reasonable cost. As a former HPC member, I can assure you the historic reports are written with an end result in mind. If the owner is seeking landmark status or Mills Act benefits, the report usually concludes the structure is historic. If the owner wants to tear the building down, the historic report minimizes the historic value. That is why the HPC and the Planning Commission must independently verify the information given and draw their own conclusions. As mentioned earlier, the city inspector should examine the foundation. The museum should be consulted about the possible architect, and the HPC should verify the conclusions of the historic report. The city needs to up its game in preserving the town's historic properties. Ojai is an historic town. It is one of California's most historic downtown commercial districts with historic residential neighborhoods on either side. These historic areas contribute to the character of our community. It is tragic that a prior owner like Deborah Scolari lovingly restores the beauty and historic significance of a house only to have it demolished by the next owner with the approval of city planners. The Planning Commission has the tools to protect historic properties like these. CEQA is one of those tools. I urge you to deny the CEQA exemption and insist on an EIR for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Susan White?
Good evening. My name is Susan White, and I live at 501 North Signal. I would like to offer input regarding the future of the 402 North Blanche Street home. As I understand, the owners are seeking permits for demolition. As this Spanish bungalow home dates from approximately 1927 and belonged to the Clark family, it does have both architectural and historic significance. The state of California, the Resources Agency, Department of Parks and Recreation Historic Research Inventory provides information on additional Clark family residences in Ojai. The Michael H. Clark home at 1884.5 Ojai Avenue is listed in the Ojai Historic Resources Survey Phase 3 of July 1985. Michael H. Clark is the father of Thomas S. Clark, an Ojai resident who served as Ventura County Supervisor from 1904 to 1936. Thomas Clark's siblings, William P. Clark and his sister Emma E. Clark, resided at 402-412 North Blanche in the 1930s and 40s U.S. censuses. The property sold in 2015 for $820,000 and appears to be a double lot with mature oaks and an artist studio. I hope that the Planning Commission will refer the proposed request for demolition to the Historic Preservation Committee, reopen the public hearing, or minimally oversee the design review guidelines process to ensure that the new structure fits the scale and architecture of the neighborhood. Please refer to the March 2011 City of Ojai Historic Resources Screen Survey Final Report that was prepared for the City of Ojai, California Historic Preservation Commission. The report was prepared by San Buenaventura Research Associates at 1328 Woodland Drive in Santa Paula for suggested guidelines and review recommendations. As nearby property owners of a 1934 home, we will be under the same review process ourselves for any future construction or remodeling plans. We have been careful to honor Ojai's unique architectural history and style, and I have admired the home at 402 North Blanche and hope that it can be saved, moved, or that a careful design review can be implemented regarding construction. So many of the city's original homes are gone in the downtown area, and 402 North Blanche is a beautiful example of early Ojai architecture. The character of Ojai needs to be preserved, not eliminated, piece by piece. I am urging the Planning Commission to slow down the demolition process and allow every opportunity to save this historic home. The precedent that is established for demolition and reconstruction or remodeling of historic structures will be vital in protecting Ojai's architectural and cultural heritage.
Thank you, Mary. Susan, sorry. Katie Van Horn?
It's an honor to be here. Thank you. I talk about this dwelling both in a personal and impersonal sense. In the personal sense, Gina and John and Darwin are close friends of mine, so that is a known factor. In an impersonal sense, every project that Darwin has taken on as an architect has been without ego, and he senses the neighborhood. So he goes in and talks to his clients. He is one of the most reverent people about historical review, often goes to historical sites all over Santa Barbara and Ventura counties, and is impeccable in his viewing and his appreciation and his modesty about what he's about. But he doesn't have any ego about a project. He's sensing what will be something that will work for the town and will register what has already been here. There are several George Washington Smith's houses in Ojai in that particular neighborhood. And he knows, and a lot of people know, that this little bungalow had a huge mold problem, and it has had a base problem to the structure that it has been debilitating to two families. And having come from an historic, beautiful historic adobe in Sonoma built in 1843, I got so sick, and I moved to Ojai because of that, but from the same thing that a woman told me about that put her child in the hospital from living in that house. And I feel very protective, not only about the town and maintaining a balance, but I do think that there needs to be a frame of reference and a quiet and a trust in the method of Darwin's architecture. It is so stately and so in keeping with the environment around, and the fact that he's the head of the historic preservation is no small feat of his, and he is learned about this. So he's not introducing something new to Ojai that hasn't already been. In several blocks further away, there's a George Washington Smith house. But if I had my, if I could choose, I would either live in a Darwin McCready house or across the street so I could look at it, because it will be such a graceful and cohesive unit to the neighborhood. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. Mary Nelson.
Mary Nelson, 31 Terramina Lane, Ojai. I didn't realize Darwin was involved in this project, and of course I think everything he does is wonderful. But it seems like every day there is a new threat to the look of our community, the feel, our way of life. And I think what we're looking at now with tearing down this house and replacing it with a two-story structure, I think that's a slippery slope. If you drive over to Eucalyptus and Lion and look at that house on the corner there, I mean, it doesn't work. And I think probably the people who ended up doing those projects are just as unhappy with it as everybody else in the neighborhood. Of course, I can't say for sure. So I just want to say that I'm scared about all these things that are happening to Ojai now. I've been here since 1946, so I've seen a lot of changes, but none so much as in these recent years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Darwin?
Actually, I was hoping to speak as the applicant, so am I still limited to the 3 minutes?
No. So, should
Want me to go last?
It's reasonable to provide the applicant additional time.
Yeah.
I'm happy to go last.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other cards, but let me just confirm that. Anybody else would like to speak on this matter? No? Okay. Should I close the public hearing first, or he still has to speak as in that? Okay.
I have to admit to, good evening, Chair Isabella and Commissioners, sorry for that. I have to admit to being a little bit shaky on my feet tonight, so to speak. There's just a tremendous amount of confusion over the unusual nature of the continuance and how that happened. It's highly unusual. The publishing of the agenda was late, not giving us very much time to prepare. The note to commission at the end of the recommendation in the agenda was highly unorthodox and unusual, and the lack of any minutes with which we, the applicant and my clients, could figure out these things made it very difficult and very curious. And so we were hoping to delay this project so that we could obtain legal counsel to be with us here tonight. And I can assure you that in all future meetings on this project with staff and this commission, and should this go to appeal council, we will have vigorous legal defense at our side to guard against any potential illegal action by staff or this commission or council. I wanted to reintroduce you to my clients, John and Gina. They're not outsiders. They're longtime Ojai residents. They've lived in the East End for many years. They're a family. They have a teenage child, 2 dogs, 2 cats, soon a mother-in-law to be living with them. They've been looking to live in the downtown area for a long time. And the purchase of 402 Blanche Street was not something that they took lightly. This is a large lot. It's 10,480 square feet. It had the potential for a sizable increase in the size of the structure. And so they purchased the property with that in mind. And we embarked on a very rigorous design phase of this project to see whether we could use the cottage, add on to the cottage, somehow reuse the cottage. And it was an unwilling partner, as I've said to you prior in our meeting 2 weeks ago. And as it's been mentioned here tonight in the screening survey, it's a Category 2, not requiring an historic resources report. We had an historic resources report prepared at a cost of thousands of dollars. It's not eligible for landmarking in the city of Ojai. It's not eligible for landmarking on a state or federal level. And we had the pardon me. So we came to you after coming to the conclusion that in order to save the cottage, we were tearing it down. And we had a good review with you on our concept review. We had a good review with you 2 weeks ago. And so we're really puzzled that the public comment period was closed 2 weeks ago, and now it's open. The commission comment period was closed 2 weeks ago, and now it's open. A vote was taken 2 weeks ago at which this property was approved, and now it's not approved. So we're terribly concerned. We're terribly confused, and we are just not knowing what is going to be in front of us next. The DRP application package is absolutely Byzantine. It has 156 bullet points on it. The staff is allowed 30 days to accept or reject that application package. They took well over that to accept our package. It's no small matter getting before you. We were hoping to get before you in December. We weren't able to get before you until January. Facing further delays is not what we're looking for. But we're very concerned about the treatment that we're receiving from this commission and from staff. I know I don't go on Facebook, but I have friends who do, and they send me things. And if I were able to speak directly to the opponents of this project, and I know I can't in this forum, what I would say is that for those who are concerned about the character of downtown Ojai changing and the historic nature of our architectural heritage, I agree with you. I agree with you. That's why this project is so sensitively designed and so carefully scaled. My goodness, this is a 10,480 square foot lot. Under the present zoning ordinances for the village mixed-use zone, we could construct on this site a 10,500 square foot structure. This is nowhere near this. So I reject any characterization of this being a McMansion or something that is out of scale with its neighborhood. My goodness, there's a 2-story apartment building right next door. I know that it has some mid-century modern characteristics out in front of it, but on the side facing 402 Blanche, it is a blank stucco wall with 3x6 aluminum frame windows and in-wall air conditioners, a parking area, and a carport. Across the street is another 2-story apartment building. So as far as scale goes, we're good. This is not a behemoth. It's well below the allowables in all aspects of the downtown village mixed-use zoning requirements. The second thing I would say to, in response to some of the things that I'm hearing on Facebook is that these property owners are not outsiders. They're not developers. This is not a flip. This is not a LLC. These are Ojai people. They love Ojai just as much as you do. And lastly, the requests for sending this to the Historic Preservation Commission, I have to say, as having served on the Historic Preservation Commission for 5 years, every time we have tried to expand our reach and have further review over projects of a certain age, we've had our hands slapped. We can't even obtain review of sites on our historic sites of merit without getting pushback from council. So I would say to people in the community, if you want Historic Preservation Commission to have expanded review of projects, you need to consult with your councilmen and councilwomen. Lastly, if you choose to approve this project, and I hope you do, I think it's a worthy project. I think it'll be a beautiful addition to the downtown Ojai area. I think it'll be the most beautiful house in downtown Ojai and the most appropriate one. You will not be disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Darwin. Anybody else like to speak? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the commission. Mr. Summers, did you want to weigh in on anything that was said?
I'm happy to answer any questions, but that are posed by the commission. I don't have any direct comments
Okay.
unless there's questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe we should talk about the continuance first. I looked up when the agenda was posted, and it was posted the same day, Friday, that we received our packet, so I don't know what the expectation is for posting the agenda, but that's when I received it. The minutes, the meeting is archived. One could watch the meeting. I understand the confusion and the concern for things that have been sort of, the continuance is different. I haven't experienced that before. But aside from that, I would sort of be in favor of at least having like a de facto continuance, in the sense that I would like to review with my fellow commissioners the possibility of perhaps sending it to HPC with the proviso that a peer-reviewed report accompany the current historic report. And in that sense, it would be the actual approval or disapproval of the project would be continued in that regard. Not officially continued, but Mr. Summers.
I think then if that was the commission's approach, I would recommend that you continue the item from the planning commission to a date uncertain to be rescheduled pending review by the HPC and completion of a peer-reviewed historic resource report, if that's the commission's direction.
Okay.
I would like to ask you.
Hang on, I need to open the public hearing.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
So what is the status of the vote of 2 weeks ago?
I can speak to that if you
Okay.
wish. The commission's vote 2 weeks ago was to preliminarily approve the project, but not final approval, and direction to the staff to return with a resolution that would accomplish the final approval. And as is evident, they retain the right to change their mind.
Actually, and everyone that I've talked to felt that they voted to approve the project and staff chose to continue. It's very confusing. Possibly a procedural error.
My understanding of the commission's action was that they voted to preliminarily approve the
At
project.
your direction.
Say again?
At your direction.
They chose to follow that direction, though. I don't have a vote. I don't control the commission.
Highly unusual.
It isn't an illegal process. It may not be typical for this town, but it's not illegal. The process chosen.
Highly unusual.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Summers.
May I?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I suspect there may be some umbrage taken here mistakenly. If you look at the agenda, this matter is on the consent list. This, if you attend city council meetings, means that there is an anticipation because of past actions, in that case by the council, in this case by the commission, that there has been paperwork changed or maybe not even any necessary changes made, but the anticipation being that this would be the final approval in the form that it's presented in the packet. In fact, last meeting, we voted 6-1 not to continue the item, not to send it to the HPC, and to direct staff to modify the staff report and/or the resolution to reflect certain changes that had to do with setback and other things, to make sure that we didn't misstate how the proposed new project would be sitting on the property in terms of setback and other things. And so the anticipation was that we would give final approval to this as it's written now. I haven't seen any action by city staff other than to make changes to the resolution that were requested by the commission 2 weeks ago. And I have not seen any actions by city staff to delay anything. This consent item here is the first time that we have had the opportunity to give final approval to a resolution in the form that we asked for it at our previous meeting. And so I just want all of that on the record. No one that I know of is trying to delay this any more than necessary to get the resolution in the form that the Planning Commission thinks is appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Quillisi. Okay, so are we going to just carry on? All right, so let's discuss the possibility of whether or not this commission is open to sending it back to HPC with the proviso that it be accompanied by a peer review of the historic report. Commissioner Corbin?
Well, I'm new to this commission, and so I'm just learning about all the appropriate protocols. I have thought a lot about this project since our last meeting, and I did comment at the last meeting that I was not happy to see the house torn down, but I think that to me, the way I understood the material was perhaps not correct. And so I would like to see it slowed down for the following reasons. I think that most of our commentary at the last meeting was addressing whether or not the new project was a good project. And I don't have any problem with the new project, but what my problem is, where my discomfort is tearing down a 100-year-old house. And I think that there are some reasons to look at this again. I feel that the historical report, I went through it again, is conflicting. In some parts, it does say that the house has maintained its integrity, and then in the conclusion, it tells us it doesn't appear to be eligible for listing. Now, this may not be an appropriate house for national landmarking, but this is Ojai, and there isn't really a whole lot of architecture here that is appropriate, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have historical value. And as far as the structural issues go, I think that probably needs verification too. In my experience, most 1927 houses have structural issues. I've lived in many houses dating from 1896, several from 1920s. They've all had structural issues. I've renovated all of them, and we fixed those issues. It may be that this house can't be fixed, but we don't have any verification other than commentary that there are problems with structure. And so I would like to see a little bit more information about that. We've heard a lot about saving the trees and not wanting to expand into the backyard because we're saving the trees. Well, most of these trees got a C or C- rating on aesthetics and health. Perhaps if a couple of them were actually taken out, the rest of them would be healthier. And I think that I would be willing to vote for some leniency on what happens with the trees in the back if it were going to allow at least a good portion of the facades of the house to remain intact. And as I think that for me, the project opens up a question of what the goal is for the city. I have no problem with your design. I think it's a nice design, but I don't think that's the question. For me, that's not the question. And I would like to get a little bit more verification information. I'd like to see if it's possible to move the house someplace and allow you to build the house that you want on that property. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Corbin. Who would like to go next?
Well, I'm a little confused because this is a consent item, but we got a request from the owner to continue it. And we also have received on this, I've been on this commission 18 years, and I have never seen such an outpouring of email and comments. There's obviously a lot of concern in the community, and I think it would serve everybody's best interest to take the time to send this to the HPC and have them look at it. And, we have the opportunity here if we continue it, and I think that would be a good thing to do.
Commissioner Nolan?
And this may, I know we closed the public hearing, but maybe we could open it up again and ask the applicant. He's made the request to continue, and if at that time or the continuance, would new information be provided, which may answer some of the questions, like as far as the integrity of the foundation, what have you, and that may weigh in on our final decision. So I am open to continuing it, and I know at the last meeting, I didn't see necessarily the need to go to Historic Preservation or the Historic Commission, but I could see that now. I have no problem with the architecture. I think it's beautiful. I don't think it's overmassed. They'd be using the same footprint as the initial building, so there's no question in my mind about that. I think it's more maybe just validating the condition of the house because we don't have a report, and then just because we did get so much public comment, do we want to weigh in and get the comments from Historic Preservation Commission? So I would be open to that at this point. And maybe at some point if we could open up the public hearing and ask the applicant about if there's any additional material that they could supply.
Thank you, Commissioner Nolan. I'm going to go next then. I'd just like to remind everybody that we are all volunteers. We are community volunteers, and we spend a lot of our personal time and energy to try to do the right thing on behalf of the community and the people involved who come to us. And we don't take it lightly. We take it very seriously, as evidenced by the amount of time that we put into researching and reading and trying to understand what the right thing to do is. And ultimately, this is not a personal decision. There is obviously, there's a subjective element, but we are bound by and guided by our general plan, our municipal code, and CEQA. And if we weren't, then it really would be a subjective and irrational process, and a lot scarier one. But a lot of my concerns last time was that we were not actually perhaps hewing to those guidelines as carefully and clearly as we should be. So to that end, I'd like to just clarify a couple of things. What did the general plan say? That's what I always go back to. What does the general plan says? It says the city shall attempt to preserve all historical buildings/resources designated by the city council and shall strive to identify and preserve potential historical resources. The city shall prepare and maintain a historical resources inventory that identifies and evaluates historical resources in the city. This home has appeared on the 3 inventories of historical buildings, the one in 1986, the Historical Resources Recon Survey in 2009, and the Ojai Screening Survey in 2011. CEQA, or California Environmental Quality Act, its policy is to develop and maintain a high-quality environment now and in the future, and to take all action necessary to protect, rehabilitate, and enhance the environmental quality of the state. Cultural heritage is one of the things that it protects. To automatically qualify as an historical resource under CEQA, the LA Land Conservancy says that under CEQA, trigger the requirement for an environmental impact report, any building targeted for demolition must be listed in a city register of historic landmarks. However, a resource doesn't have to be officially designated in order to trigger the requirement of an EIR. Okay, so at our meeting a couple of weeks ago, I was unwilling to move the project forward before we even got to design review and the design of the project for these reasons. I understand what you're saying, Darwin, about feeling like the City Council hasn't supported you, but to my knowledge, especially after the Neff Lounge, there was a joint meeting with the City Council and the HPC, and the commitment was to support the HPC. And I think that guides our actions to, as we supported you with the Neff, and we did not move that project forward. I think that this commission does respect the HPC, and we've been asked to do so, and we do our best to strike that balance. The second reason that I was concerned was there has been a lot of oft-repeated claims about the foundation crumbling. We heard tonight someone claiming mold. That's fine. We can't operate on hearsay. Staff, my understanding was staff asked for some kind of a foundation or structural report and didn't receive one. So is that the case?
Right, we asked for it because it was brought up during the concept review. That's why it wasn't included in the current report that's before you, because we weren't able to actually provide the documentation to you. We're still willing to take that in and provide it to you should that be provided to staff.
Okay. So maybe that is something we can work toward.
Can I answer some of these questions?
Yes, may I finish? And then for me, the biggest thing were the flaws and the inconsistencies that I found in the Phase 1 historic survey. The city of Ojai has landmark standards. Its character, interest, or value as part of the development, heritage, or cultural characterization of the community. It only needs to meet one of these standards, mind you. Its embodiment of distinguishing characteristics of an architectural style, valuable for the study of a period or type of construction. Its embodiment of design or details that render it architecturally significant. Its unique location of singular physical characteristics that make it an established or familiar visual feature. It shall have historic, aesthetic, or special character or interest for the general public. These same landmark standards for Ojai, the city of Ojai, say, it also says that if it meets any of these, it must also have sufficient integrity of location, design, materials, and workmanship to make it worthy of preservation. The report concludes, the historic report concludes, that the property does have integrity of location, materials, and workmanship, and it only gets a demerit on design for the windows and doors. And lots of our designated homes have replaced windows and doors. The other problem that I had with the Phase 1 historic survey is that it makes certain assumptions about city practices with regard to whether or not a project is landmarkable. Projects, comments that I don't find anywhere in the landmarking standards. The report said, okay, so the California Register of Historical Resources cites one condition that could be used to landmark a property. It's associated with events that made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of local or regional history. The report says the property may be eligible for its association with a significant historical event, the residential development of Ojai. But then they add, but it played no notable role. But that isn't in the standards. Whether they played a notable role is not in the standards. If that is an assumption about how things have been done in the past, then it needs to be something that gets clarified by the city council. And as one person pointed out, this family has dated back to the 70s, and their original house does still stand on Ojai Avenue. Another standard to be considered on the California Register of Historic Resources, it's associated with the lives of persons important to local, California, or national history. The report says the property is associated with the famous adoptee rights activist who continued her organizational work in Ojai. But she mainly came here to rest. Therefore, the property does not represent the period when she made her significant contributions. That is also not part of our landmarking standards. Another standard embodies the distinctive characteristics of type, period, or method of construction. Again, merely saying that the doors and windows have been changed does not seem to be a barrier for some of our other historically designated properties. I think that it's also been confusing at the least to that you are the architect of the project and the chair of the HPC. I think that it's confusing and conflicting for us. I think on the one hand, there's this sort of, again, this sort of assumption, well, my goodness, he would never, do the wrong thing. But again, that's not a basis on which we can be making decisions. I think we have a basic problem with the way that we secure historic reports. I think that the fact that they are paid for and the vendor is chosen by the applicant is probably a problem. In real estate, you don't, if there's ever a conflict about a fact, people get, they don't, the person with the vested interest doesn't get to choose who the vendor is. And I think that policy needs to change, or that practice needs to change. So, in conclusion, and I'd also like to say, 23 letters we received from the community. And I asked a couple people to write letters. I don't know the majority of these people. I know 2 or 3. And I did ask people to, if they were concerned, to write in, because I think it's unclear. I think it wasn't clear to me whether or not there was support for this. It was sort of whether or not there was support for preserving the historic buildings in Ojai. I didn't know if that was an important thing for the community. So it obviously is for a lot of people. And I think this project is illuminating that we have to try to balance everybody's interests, try to have a civil conversation about how we move to trying to create a win-win for everybody. I don't think that it has to be an either or, but I do think that we have to try to continue to communicate, try to understand that there are people who feel very strongly about this. Maybe they're conflating it with other things that they shouldn't about how the town is changing. But at the same time, you as homeowners have property rights, and that is no small thing. And I don't think anybody should take that lightly either. You've made a big investment, and from a real estate point of view, everybody needs to understand what's what. What is the policy of the city? What's the process of the city? And I am hopeful that this process will really clarify things and point out where we need clarification. So for all of these reasons, I think we do need to slow down. I think we need to clarify for the greater good of everyone who will be facing a project like this. And I think because I have so many problems with the historic report, I would like for it to be peer-reviewed and sent down to HPC at the same time. If maybe it makes sense at that point to also include a structural report or something that supports the concerns of that you have about whether or not you can work with the existing structure, and then let's bring it back and review at that time. So, thank you.
Chair Zabilla, one clarification.
Yeah.
When you mentioned that you told folks to write some letters, you of course were telling them to write their
Opinions.
comments, but not providing any content.
No, exactly.
Thank you for the clarification.
I just want to make a comment for the record. I personally do not have a problem with the architect being on the Historic Preservation Commission. I mean, I look at this project as an architect bringing it forward, not as somebody from Historic Preservation, even though I know in fact that's the case. but I feel like he's wearing the hat of an architect in the project, so just for the record.
Commissioner Quillisi.
Thank you, Chair Zabilla. I think at this point we have followed the city's process. I don't know, but I don't think that peer review of projects of this sort from a historic report nature is a part of the current city process. Can you say that is or is not the case?
So we have used peer review for other processes where there's been controversy over not at arm's length of a report. The city has been informed about, because as Matt will say, under the CEQA issues, different reports and technical reports need to be at arm's length. We have informed them that the process is not what other cities use, allowing applicants to provide the vendor. But as I said, from a staff's perspective, we talked about peer reviewing it, but I don't have that policy coming down from City Council. It was my understanding if Planning Commission feels that they are not, there's some issues with the report, then they're most certainly empowered to ask for it. Is that not correct, Matt?
Yeah, the Planning Commission has the power to seek peer review on a historic report. I'm not sure that that has been done in the last couple of years, but I can't speak to the history before that. But it's within the Commission's power.
Okay.
I also will say that back when the NEF came down, and it was the same firm that did the NEF report, these all issues were brought up by HPC regarding, getting more companies to come in and do reports and have it not be applicant. This was a concern of the HPC because that's exactly what happened with the NEF Lounge. Was the report was written, staff took the report verbatim of how the professionals wrote the report, and then it ended up being very controversial because not everybody agreed with it. And so that is something that's been a concern since that happened, which I think was in 2015. So, given the last year or two, and staff has worked to get more firms available for us to use. We now have 3 that are generally operating in the city. But again, it's at this point in time, unless we get direction from the city manager, it is at the applicant's ability to pick and choose which firm they use. So it has been an issue before.
Okay, thank you. In my professional background, which is aerospace and communications, I'm used to dealing with hard data in making decisions. And the applicant made certain assertions in the concept review, I guess it was, back the 1st of June, and again 2 weeks ago, that the foundation was insufficient to support the proposed project, and that the walls, at least the outer walls, maybe all the walls, I don't recall, of the building were 3 inches thick rather than 4. No one on staff or on the commission disputed that. I presumed that there was data behind those statements, and I find that there has been no evidence presented to back up those assertions, and I'd like to see the data. Thank you.
Commissioner Nolan.
If we ask for the peer review report, would the applicant then proceed with that, or is that something the city would be doing?
I believe at this point in time it'd be probably something the city would undertake. Is that not your understanding, Matt? And I would just say that if we're going to do that, then we should, it would be probably prudent for the commission to direct staff on where they think the inconsistencies are in their report. And again, I think Matt is prepared tonight to answer a few questions, because it seemed like there were some real concerns about the layers, the national, the California registered, the local, and CEQA, which are all 4 different thresholds of what we have to do. And it's as one of the members of the audience came up and said, about the category exemption, and I was very clear about this when we did the NEF. If you base it on the historic report, then we prepared the exemption based on the historic report. It's all a series of tiers, okay? So if you have issues with the report and how the report sees the historic resources, then it's, as I said, again, I don't repeat myself, but this is always the issue. If the report is flawed, then the subsequent drawing the conclusion that it's exempt from CEQA is flawed. So you have to follow it all the way through. And so Matt and I did talk and go through the layers if you're interested or you have questions about that, because ultimately, it's as it was stated, you can only use that exemption if you make that finding. And that finding of how staff made it and prepared it was based on the historic report.
Nothing? Okay. Okay, well, would someone like to make, oh, Darwin, would you like to, well, I'd like to open the public hearing. Would you like to come up and? No. Okay.
I'd like to.
Okay.
I'm the homeowner.
Oh, good. Please do.
Please make Can I do it afterwards? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I've sat through a couple of these meetings now. Find them very interesting, especially some inconsistencies of information, and it's probably due to the complexity of what you guys have to deal with from a regulation perspective. I find it interesting that what we believe is on the books today in terms of your requirements and what we're trying to accomplish following all the rules are going to change based on something that's already in place today, which are the rules at hand. I understand and I appreciate the public being concerned of moving forward. My concern as a homeowner and spending a lot of money trying to build a house that my family can live in and be in part of this community in town is to figure out what the current laws are and how to work within those laws to do what we can do. Now, I appreciate the need to move forward and say, we're not happy with what we're doing, but where things stand today, I find it very interesting that we're having this conversation today when I've seen McMansions being built in town and I've seen a lot of other stuff that goes on. We're talking about a house that actually 10 years ago got a room addition and a garage put on, which I think does affect its historical perspective, right? We're also not doing 100% demolition, we're doing a partial demolition. We're keeping some of that. So it's interesting. The thing that is most challenging for me right now at this moment has been the comment that John made and somebody else made, and not specifically, but you're like, I've got 23 people against it. Well, you know what? I'm not a social media guy. My wife is, and have friends that are, and I have to tell you that those 23 messages that came through, or those emails that come through, most of them, maybe not the two that you're talking about or three, came through because of the lies and inconsistency of information being presented. Right? Talking about it's going to be a McMansion, that we're coming from LA, we're flipping a house. I mean, so you have to put in perspective those 23 emails relative to the people that showed up last week or 2 weeks ago that were our neighbors, right? And to our neighbors today. They're talking about, we want to be part of a community. So please put those 23 in perspective, because when I read the vitriol that was on there, I was fearing for my life, right? I'm feeling for Darwin's reputation. Because what it is incorrect information and no one's asking real questions. And it's really scary and sad. So please put that into your perspective when you look at those responses. And I do appreciate that. Trust me, I do not want to see this town not exist in a format that respects the history. That's why we spent all this time and money building or trying to build a house that looks 90 years old, that looks like it's been there forever. That's the point. We're fans of the oak trees. Yes, they're seeds. We've already started to work on those oak trees. We're trying to bring them back. We're trying to protect this piece of property, build a home that we can live in with my mother and with our daughter when she comes and goes from college, and die and grow old in this town, which we love and we spent 20 years living in. So it's a tough balance, and I appreciate that. But understand that we're not trying to come from the outside, and be wary of what you read in all these emails, because the information that created them is lies against us and against what's going on in the community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Just
Chair Sabella?
Sure.
I'd like to say I agree with you, Mr. Patel. I greeted these emails with a lot of skepticism. And this is the first time in my experience that we've had people sending emails directly to the commission. In the past, people have written letters. And I think that's a very different process. If someone actually takes the time to write out a letter, puts it in the mailbox, they've thought about it. And it's the same thing when people come to the meeting and talk about things. As you've probably experienced, it takes a lot to get up and actually speak in public about something. So I really appreciate people that come to the meetings. And I'm very skeptical of this whole, it's almost like a mob rule or something, these outpourings of emotion that are really not based on any facts at all. So I think that's kind of what we're getting at here, is we'd like to get down to the facts of the deal. Thank you.
Commissioner Nolan?
I just wanted to say I agree with the applicant and Commissioner Merck, because I did happen to see those emails also, and I don't know that I saw one of them that had any facts in it, and there are quite a few. I haven't read, I don't know if these are different from the ones that we received from staff, and if they're different from the ones that I saw on social media. But I do want to say that I do remember and appreciate the fact that you did have people in support of the project that came in last time.
I'd just like to respond. It's nice to hear from you, Mr. Patel. I was probably remiss in not encouraging you to come up last time, but I never know who feels comfortable public speaking or not. I will say that these letters, although I make it a point to stay off social media for the same reason, I do think that it creates a mob mentality. We have also, as commissioners, been the subject of personal attacks in the same way, unjustifiably so. So I understand what it feels like. I will say that the general tenor of these letters is really not, I haven't seen one that talks about you being outsiders or building a McMansion. It's more just a sentimental love for a 1927 home and what it represents to people. So I think it's both and. Yeah.
I just want, point of clarification. There is a letter, an email in here too, in support of the project. This packet is not completely anti. I don't want it to go unnoticed. It's in the middle of your packet, and it's from Rick Basaccia, the ex-HPC commissioner. So I just want to make sure that we didn't want you to think the whole entire packet. We did include the ones that were sent in support of the project too.
Thank you. Okay, so Commissioner Powers.
Oh, I just want to say something about these emails. I do spend a fair amount of time on social media. It's sort of my blog, and I try to correct people's misinformation and try to keep people abreast of what's happening in the city and county as much as I can. I think, my feeling what occurred with these emails is that in general, I mean, you can tell by the number of people that come to planning commission meetings from the public, we don't have a huge turnout like the city council does on some agenda items. So often I think that people don't even know what's on the agenda till after the fact. And then someone watches it on the YouTube channel or hears about it from a friend, and then it becomes a talking point after the fact, and then it generates comments and a conversation in the community. So there's a lag there. And I just wanted to mention that I think that's what occurred here. Whether these were in direct response to the post that was on the Ojai Community Forum page on Facebook or not, I don't know, because that's not mentioned. But there isn't anything inflammatory in here regarding anything about, I know there were comments on social media, but that's not what is in these emails. Chair Zabilla is correct that, what's in here is really just about the love of Ojai and preserving the character.
Mr. Summers? Oh, okay.
I have a question at this point. We have this as a consent item, and I think we can vote to approve it, we can vote to continue it, or we could vote to continue it with conditions, like send it to the HPC for their opinion. But we also have now a request from the applicant to continue. From the initial comments that Mr. McCready made, my impression was that the applicant's request for a continuance was for the purpose of acquiring legal representation in case we did not consent to this consent item. I don't know if that's the case, and I'm not sure, Mr. Summers, what we have to consider first, the applicant's request for a continuance or the item itself. Can you clarify that?
Happy to clarify. I think they should be considered together. The first question is, do you wish to continue it or not? If you wish to act tonight, then don't continue, of course. If you wish to continue it, then the second question becomes, in the decision tree, do you wish to simply continue it to your next meeting, which may be the applicant's request. Notably, he doesn't ask for when it should be continued to. Alternatively, do you wish to continue it to a date uncertain and direct it to be refer the matter to the Historic Preservation Commission for their analysis, and then at the same time also decide whether you wish to direct staff to engage a second historian to provide a peer-reviewed historic resources report. Does that clarify?
So the first decision we have to make is whether to continue the item. Okay.
That's correct.
Would we make a motion in that regard then?
That would be in order.
Even if we have a part two?
Yeah, I mean, you could make your motion and then provide for discussion.
Okay.
The other thing is, if a motion were made to approve this, and it were passed, that would make moot any request for a continuance from the commission or from the applicant, correct?
That would be in effect denying the request to continue and instead approving it.
Yeah, okay.
And I would expect that the applicant would support that approach. Although I'll let the applicant speak for himself.
Okay.
I would. You would.
Would anybody like to make a motion to,
You may.
Did you close the public hearing?
Yeah, before we start
sorry,
motions.
I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you. Would anybody like to consider making a motion to continue the item to a date uncertain, and in the interim send it to HPC with a peer-reviewed report, and or actually refer it to staff to send it to HPC to include a peer-reviewed of this historic report and perhaps another request or a request for some kind of inspection of the foundation.
I wonder if we consider the other question first. Should we just vote on this as a item on the consent calendar and just see where we are on that? Because we have to establish that first, I think.
The chair has already pulled the item off the consent calendar. It's now a discussion item.
So it's not a...
But you could still make a motion for approval. That's also in order. The chair has invited a motion. It's up to the rest of the commissioners to make said motion. The chair also has the power to make a motion.
Okay, well, that's the motion I'd like to make.
Could I get some clarity first and ask a question? So I'm hearing four things. I'm hearing a motion to grant the continuance. I'm hearing a motion to send it to the HPC.
Send it to staff. For... To HPC, but it goes through staff, right? Yes.
Direct staff to take it
Direct
to
staff
HPC
to take it
for
to
a
HPC.
recommendation.
Okay. I'm hearing a peer review of the historical report. I'm hearing a request for data or substantiation, verification regarding foundation and wall thickness of the property.
Well, may I? So my only concern about the data with the foundation is that, that's not been any consideration into, that's something that the applicant has brought up, or different people. It's the same thing as we're talking about the issues with the social media. People bring up things that aren't really pertinent to the conversation. The applicant has not submitted any documentation, so there's no reason for the building. We would not send a building official out there to make a professional determination on the foundation, because it is not any part of your staff report or any basis to the findings that we're looking at this point, because it's not something that's been submitted for our consideration. If the applicant wants to have that considered, then he has the opportunity to provide that documentation to staff, and then we would have someone qualified to review that. It would be stamped by a licensed engineer. Same with somebody, if they want to submit something regarding mold or any of those other things, those are professionals out in the private sector that do those things. We're talking about peer review of the historic report because there's some concerns about inconsistencies in it. That's it. And that's usually done by another professional in the field. So if I can make that clear, at this point, whether it's got bad foundation or small walls has nothing to do, that's not even in the historic report. So, it's just kind of a.
Got it. It's not a part of the record right now, so they always have that option to include that. But she's just saying it doesn't make sense to require it.
So it's nothing we can request.
Well,
It's not relevant.
You certainly can request it, but it's the applicant's not proposing it, so it's not part of his proposal as to why the justification for bringing this house down, because he's not provided any of it for anybody to review. If you want to invite the applicant to submit something, staff would be glad to review it and make it part of what we bring back to you. Mm-hmm. That would be the first start, is for him to provide that documentation to us from the professionals.
I'd just say, in general, anytime you go up 2 stories on a 1-story foundation, you're going to have problems with the foundation because it was probably designed just for a 1-story building to begin with. So there's always a process you have to go through, proving the size of the foundation and so on, that it really doesn't affect.
Or in this case, proving a negative, that the foundation would not support a 2-story building.
Yeah.
That's
And
very difficult.
For a building like this, I'd be really surprised if it's up to the current code in terms of 2-story buildings.
So I'm withdrawing the part of my motion that included the request to include a structural report. But that's the motion. Do I have a second? So the motion is to continue the item to a date uncertain and have staff refer it to staff to refer it to HPC to be included with a peer review of the existing historic report.
I'll second that for the purpose of discussion.
Okay. So, well, I mean, I think I spent hours working on this today to try to illuminate my concerns about the inconsistencies that I saw in the historic report. I don't do it gleefully. I don't do it happily. I don't. It's just the way that what I read. And, if we don't have rigor in these reports and everything, rises and falls on the report, then we have a problem here and we have a problem in general. We have to have rigor in these reports. So, in the same way that Commissioner Quillisi says we need data, we need, but I am not at the end of the day an expert in this matter. I would like an expert to see if they share my concerns or share the other concerns that people have brought up with regard to this report. So that's why I think that it would be best served in this path. Anybody else have any?
Then let's call the question then.
Let's do what? Vote?
Oh.
Okay, roll call.
Quillisi,
No.
Corbin,
Yes.
Merck,
Yes.
Isabella,
Yes.
Nolan,
Reluctantly, yes.
and Powers.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you for your patience.
So we continue that to a date uncertain, is that correct? Is that,
Yes, yes,
we didn't set a date for the next,
No. HBC meets once a month, and so I assume that's why it's a date uncertain. But we'll notice this project again before we bring it back to you, so that's not really a problem.
So it'll be March or later.
Yes, sir.
It could be in February.
I thought HPC was meeting at the end of the month.
Yes, March.
For us, yes, it's March or later.
Okay,
They asked him to do it.
put it in the pile.
We should always get a card.
He said he would do it.
We don't always get personal applicants.
Okay.
Do you save those?
I don't know, if somebody saves them, I guess.
Yes. Oh, I did.
Okay, so, have we done everything? I guess we've done everything. Future agenda items.
So for February 1st, we have going before you the rezone of Bryant Circle. And this DRP 1607-123 Fairview Road, that was determined to not be a DRP based on a new interpretation by the city manager regarding what on a single-family lot requires a DRP. So we'll be removing that from your calendar. And then the landscape ordinance, which needed some revisions done to it for, it was brought before you before, and then we noticed what Ms. Nolan. Anyhow, we thought everything was in there, and then there was some discrepancy between the first time it came with the WELO and what was supposed to be, and it was supposed to actually be matching. So when it was assigned to staff only changed the things that were the in addition. And then when they looked at it, was the first time it was done in, 2014? It was missing some things. So we need to circle back around and bring it back for you because we really want to get this done right. And it was very odd that it was, in other words, we only brought before you the red lines between the first WELO and the second modified WELO. But it really needed a little bit more cleanup than that.
And I just want to make a comment. I know that, I believe it was at the joint city council meeting that we had in September, that topic came up and you and I had said, let's get together, and because we needed to go over Article 12, and that's where a lot of the discrepancies are.
There was even discrepancies, like I said, between the first state law and the second state law.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
we're coming back, fixing it right before we take it to city council.
Right.
We'd like to get this right and get
And would
the
it
right
include
ones.
Article 12 also? Because okay, good.
But
Yeah.
not the modifications that you would be looking for, the kind of things that you want to do. That's still on your agenda to do.
Meaning,
In other words, what will be brought for you at the February 1st meeting is a straight adoption of the newest state model
Okay.
water efficient landscape ordinance with no local amendments. And that's the key.
Okay.
Is the previous draft that had come through was a red line adding just the new state things but maintaining the previous local amendments. Staff understood council's direction to only adopt this pure state requirement with no local amendments.
Okay.
So what's coming before you again will be the deletion of the previous local amendments such that it's purely a state WELO text only. But
Okay.
retaining, of course, the things that are in Article 12 that are not WELO issues.
okay.
Right.
The other non-water efficient landscaping
Right.
Right,
points.
things when it triggers and things like
Right.
that.
And those-
So it's still on our plate
Okay.
for you to do the local things.
Okay, good. So then I'll call you.
Yes,
Okay.
please. Okay, and then the museum gates back on February 1st, but they probably won't go either because, like as I said earlier tonight, HPC did look at the museum gates, continued the item, weren't happy with them, so that's not going to be able to come back until March, till it goes to the HPC in their meeting in February, and they approve a design. We were under the impression, because the way it was explained to staff, you know, the inner working between the museum, the HPC, and city council, giving them the funds for these, that they were sort of kind of a little bit procedural, that people had kind of got the design to where it needed to be. We didn't understand that there was some concerns, and so like I said, we were trying to push it through for them to spend the funds and get it going. That's what we thought we were doing. We didn't realize that there were issues. So we're going to hold that off, let it flesh out at HPC, and then come back. So our apologies for getting it kind of, we think we try to help people, you know, expedite things, and sometimes it just doesn't work. So our apologies on that. So then also on February 15th, you have 1010 Foothill. As you know, that was the work permit for that particular project was appealed by one of the, appealed by Mr. Vogue to City Council. It was agendized for the last City Council meeting, and it was continued to the next City Council meeting. But we are agendizing that for your calendar, because whether or not the appeal is won or lost really has no bearing on the DRP. And if the work permit is upheld, then we can go ahead and do the DRP. If the appeal is upheld, then evidently you don't need a work permit, and then you can go ahead with the DRP. So we're just going to push it forward for you, so we don't hold the applicant up. And then March 1st, we have the subdivision at 601 Pearl coming before you. That environmental document is out on the streets for public comment, and unless we hear some kind of some real issues with the environmental document, then we're pretty much set to bring that forward. And that's been in the pipeline for a long time. We've been working for a long time, and the applicants in that particular project are very anxious to get going. And that's it.
Okay. Commissioner Jagiello was responsible for our city council report, but he is not here. And Commissioner Nolan is going to give us her report on complete streets from January 4th. Yes?
Actually, my cohort, Commissioner Quillisi, do you have the report, or
I'm sorry, I may have gotten notes from Susan Leach.
Okay.
As preliminary minutes, but I have not edited them yet.
Yeah, I will say that, excuse me, I will say that I asked Commissioner Quillisi if he would kind of take over the note part. I was doing the facilitating and the notes at the same time for all those meetings. And Susan Leach, who happens to be our VCTC representative and comes to Complete Streets regularly, has offered to take the notes, and Steve's kind of coordinating them, and we'll bring them to commission.
I've reviewed and edited
Yeah.
those for August through December. I haven't gotten the January notes done yet.
All right. So a little change of guard there, but we're getting it under control.
We'll be looking to you, Commissioner Quillisi. But remember, brevity is important. Sustainability Committee, Commissioner Nolan, do you have anything to report in that regard?
Yes, just a brief thing. Well, we had our joint meeting, and I was hoping to have 5 minutes, but I kind of only had a minute and a half, and I didn't get to finish my presentation or request to City Council that I had previously discussed and had approved by the Planning Commission. So the mayor has said I could send it to him and I could meet with him personally. I was swamped with work this week, so I haven't done that. So I'm in the process of putting that together, and we'll send it to him, and then I'll report back. So basically, I was looking at the Sustainable Initiative Research Ordinance, and then also doing like a public works demonstration project, and then also doing a public type of workshop for water education, water conservation education. So those are the 3 items. And then I'm going to mention one other thing, and nobody has to decide on it tonight, but last Wednesday I was invited to come here at City Hall. There was a small handful of people, including the mayor was here. And we had a presentation on not only water conservation, but gray water conservation, or reuse or reclamation. And there were different members from the community that were here, and actually kind of some valley-wide representation. And there was a lot of energy and support and people wanting to get involved and actually do something, which I like. And I'm just kind of throwing this out there as an idea that, and I did mention it to one of the city council members that was there. Would it be a good idea or consideration for the city to at least offer up maybe quarterly to have a meeting here with those people so that we could actually meet, get things done, and move forward? So some of them had to do with water conservation on agricultural property. There's not that much within the city limit. There is some, but what's on the outside of the city limits and the county does affect the city also, affects our aquifer. So there was great interest in that. There was also the interest in low-impact development on city projects, which we're kind of getting going, and then also what homeowners or private property owners could do. But it was all about water conservation and recharge. And there was even some from Steve Bennett's office that was there. And we even talked about the septic systems that are in the Arbolada, some of them that are just right outside the city limit, about even maybe doing some kind of a water reclamation or wastewater reclamation project. Just talk at this point, but at least it's happening, and there's great interest, and people will actually want to get involved and do something. So I'm just throwing it out there tonight, and then maybe at our next commission we could bring it up again. And if everyone was in favor, I could ask City Council if they were in favor of it. So, okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Nolan. Did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to note that the items you just raised, Commissioner Nolan, are interesting, but would be worthy of discussion at the next meeting, not tonight, of course.
Yes, I was just kind of giving my report and then saying for future, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Summers. Oh, Commissioner Quillisi?
Thank you, Chair Zabilla. I'd like to ask a favor of my fellow commissioners before we leave item 4. I note that I have the assignment to attend, take notes on, and report back on the MAC minute meeting of July 17th next. That is a date where my presence in the city is uncertain at this point. It's hard to imagine planning that far ahead, but if someone on the board or on the commission would like to swap dates with me, I'd be very appreciative.
I'm always glad to go to a MAC meeting. So.
Okay, well, I'll take the April, I'm happy to take the April meeting and have you take the July meeting.
Great.
Thank you.
Commissioner Corbin?
On the same vein, I will be out of town on February 20th, however, it's President's Day, and I bet they're going to cancel the meeting because they canceled it on Martin Luther King's birthday, they canceled it for the Christmas and Thanksgiving holidays, so it's
Well,
probably going to get...
I'll do that day then.
Honestly, then everybody's
Then
name
your
moves
assignment will be
down.
moot.
I'm probably just going to get bumped
Okay.
to March.
So,
but it doesn't
Commissioner
get
Quillisi, that would mean you'd move down to the August meeting
canceled.
anyway,
You'll
then.
get bumped too, so...
But
you still
Yeah. Well, I'm perfectly happy to take April.
So he's going to take April, Merck is going to take, Commissioner Merck
will-
is
yeah,
going
we'll
to take,
July,
but who's going to take February?
and if February is bumped, then
February's canceled.
It's February.
Okay, so we're assuming it's canceled?
then your name will come up again, Bobby. Your name will come up again on the list.
Yes, it'll just
You
get
just
bumped.
got a pass if your meeting was canceled, I think.
Sherry was just saying to move it.
Yeah.
3 times
Well, you
already.
could, yeah.
I just get bumped down.
Yeah, if you get bumped enough, you'll just be down in July again. I do want to, if you don't mind, Chair, I'd like to also remind everybody that for the March 1st meeting, a number of you are going to training, the Planners Academy.
right,
So that leaves us with a bare minimum quorum. So if anybody's not going to be here, please let us know as early as you can, because, we agendize items and we work on the staff reports and we assume that we're going to have a quorum. I know it's going to be really bare minimum of 4, so if we're going to have someone absent, we need to know right away. I just really appreciate it if that would occur. Thanks.
So did we get clarity on what's happening for the February 20th MAC meeting?
I'm going.
No, you're going
I'm going to
to,
the, Yes.
Oh, you're going to go to Bobby's?
No, I'm going to the Planners Academy.
Who's
So
on
we're-
first?
Yeah. We have two different conversations going on.
But who's taking Bobby's? I'll take it. I'll take it.
Well, no, Sherry, we were just saying that we think that's going to be canceled because it's a federal holiday.
Okay.
So we all just moved down.
All right. Good. All
Except
right.
for John and Steve.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Okay. So if there's nothing else, I'd like to invite our city council liaison, Councilperson Francina.
I just want to express my appreciation for your very thoughtful and educational comments. I really enjoyed the meeting. And I do have a question of Matthew Summers that other people may have. When people submit an email, may I ask that? Sure. Okay, is that part of that becomes public record?
Yes.
Okay, so I would suggest that we give a packet of those emails to the applicant, because there were a few that you could tell were just off the top of the head and maybe reactive to a Facebook post, but others were truly thoughtful, and I felt caring about the future of Ojai. And I think if he saw those, it would help create an atmosphere of, and I think that's what we're trying to do. Oh, okay. But it also makes it so that we're all in it together. It's not like for or against. I think he would appreciate seeing the thought process of those people. Thank you. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. And to note for the record, as Ms. Herbert noted, a packet of them was available for the applicant and then also for any other member of the public, and the commission received the packet as well. And I'm just not sure if it was handed directly to him, but it was available to him. Okay. Oh, it was handed to him? So he did get a copy.
So he does have them. Okay, thank you.
Whether he read them or not is another story.
All right, thank you.
If there's nothing else for the good of the order, we are adjourned.